gentlemen, welcome to the 2020 panel discussions, Uncensored. This is brought to you by Transparency Initiative Seychelles. Our topic for today is sextortion. And joining me, my panel, ladies first. On my left, we have Mrs. Natasha Burian.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we have Mr. Deepak Babu. And on my right, we have Mr. Jimmy Petrus and Mr. Patrick Dice. All right, so it's a very hot topic. I don't know whether it's a topic that is well discussed in Seychelles. I know it is around the world. My first take, I will give you all about 2 to 3 minutes to have your take on what you think sextortion is, or if the definition has already been said, you can talk about any idea. What comes to your mind when you hear the word sextortion? Shall we start with you, Mr. Vitus?
Okay. To me, the word is a compound word between sex and extortion. That is, somebody's trying to get something out of some kind of sexual information, sexual data, sexual experience. You may use intimidation, threats, blackmail, any kind of thing that would benefit you. Primarily, I guess, monetarily, but there may be other benefits as well. So that's what I understand when I think about the word.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Babu, what do you think?
I think sextortion is a crime, first of all. And it's a digital crime, it's a cyber crime. And it's very sensitive also. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Burian, it's a crime.
Well,
what
is it?
Say?
Is it in our jurisdiction? That's the big question.
I don't know, yes.
I work, obviously, in the legal field as a magistrate, and I see a lot of different cases coming through the court system that have elements of what you would say maybe would be a crime of sextortion, but it isn't defined under our law. So what you often find are cases being brought with numerous different charges trying to encompass the crime of sextortion. Then at the end of the day, you have to ask whether or not, in fact, the proper sentencing at the end of the day is imposed, because of the fact that numerous charges haven't been brought to try to encompass the true severity or the extent of the crime that may have been committed. But it worries me that we don't have sextortion defined under our law. And it worries me because these are cases that I have to hear or will eventually have to hear. And also as a parent, I think I can speak as a mother as well, thinking that there's an area where my children are not adequately protected. And this needs to change. So I think it's an important discussion that we're having today.
Exactly, good. So, Mr. Dice, what do you
for
think
me, it's similar, as we already mentioned now. Sextortion is something that is morally a very high crime. It has a huge impact. It has an impact that sometimes is invisible. It's not easy to measure economically, for example, how much impact socially or even the victim have endured. So something that is sometimes a bit lenient, been taken lenient by our society, because we think some people think it's a fun thing to do. So it's very important to look at this matter. It's something that is extremely serious. It can damage people's reputation. It can damage people's lives. It can damage a social fabric, and even economics and political-wise, it's something that is even entering in these spheres. We know PEP, we know political exposed persons. We know that they are facing all kinds of threats, sometimes artificially made, and they can even be victim of sextortion. And then we have to even go further to see that if sextortion is not getting actually a currency, an illegal currency that people are threatened with, for other people to monetize out of this blackmailing.
Right.
And that is extremely uncomfortable, to say the least. And I believe it's a high crime.
Okay, good. I'm just going to go again with this. What is it? I mean, for people watching us, any examples that any of you can give of cases of sextortion? Anybody?
Well,
Yes.
it'd be a simple matter of somebody maybe hacking into your computer and getting personal information or private pictures, maybe indecent pictures of yourself on your computer, and then they will contact you and say, hey, I have this photograph of you. if you don't pay me X amount of money, I will send it to your family members or to your workplace, or I will just post it on social media. So they will blackmail that person either for money or for more sexual favors, for example.
Yeah.
That's a very typical
good
example.
Is this something you think that is happening in Seychelles, in our country?
Most definitely.
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes,
yeah,
it's
you would say,
happening.
Mr. Babu?
Yes, it's happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Give us maybe why you say you think it's happening.
Personal experiences. Because of my field, I have seen many cases that comes to me about sextortions.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Interesting.
So, what kind of I know you have mentioned how it affects people, but how else can it affect people? I'm coming to you, Mr. Petrus, because of your field. How else does it affect the personhood? More?
But you think about, let's say, a young lady who has been in a relationship for a long time with this guy, and then she decides that this relationship is not going anywhere. But perhaps during the time that she felt comfortable, she felt intimate, they've done stuff. They've taken pictures. She's been vulnerable sexually with him, which was okay in their own privacy. And then after she realized this relationship is not going anywhere, so she breaks up with him, and then he's like, I'm not ready for you to break up with me. And actually, I've got stuff on you, about you, that you would not want your mom, your dad, your family, the community to know about it. So automatically, she's thrusted in this stress mode, fear of what would happen to her reputation, what would happen to her job, what would happen to her. So psychologically, she's affected terribly.
All right, good. So I'm just going to pick up on what Mr. Dice has said earlier on, that when it happens, like we are all in election now, we all know, the mood with elections and with politicians and other people that are maybe more vulnerable, they're more on social media. So when something like that happens, because I know of two cases as well that was, on the media nationally, of two people, political persons, that had to resign because of nude pictures were being posted on the internet. Is that a crime? What does the law say about that, Mr.
Well, if you can identify who posted the pictures, it is a crime to have in your possession indecent photographs of somebody, and also to circulate them without their consent, obviously. Okay. But the problem is identifying who in fact posted those photographs. Now it depends on our information technology, the ICT, whether or not they can trace these persons, and then whether or not the police have the capabilities then to fully investigate and then to forward a file to the AG's office for prosecution.
Okay, good. Mr. Babu, can we identify in your field, can we know who posted it?
Okay, normally what happens is in any country, there's two aspects. One is the Department of Information, Communications and Technologies, and then it's the police. Unfortunately, in Seychelles, we don't have a cybersecurity cell. So we don't have a cybersecurity. So we don't have. And not only for sextortion, but cybersecurity is a very important and vital aspect of any country, because the whole economy depends on it, politics depend on it. And like Ms. Natasha was saying, that identification. So we can help the victim up to a certain limit, but after that, it gets personal. Personal experiences, when someone comes to us, we don't have a policy that we help them with sextortion. But on a personal aspect, we try to do that, and sometimes we try to identify. So that's all personal. Soul personally try to help for the humanitarian. So we try to identify. We try to be as the victim and try to have a negotiation with the criminal, and then we can come to a point where he can come to negotiate, saying that, okay, I want a ransom. But after that, what happens is that we go back to the victim, and then we say that we can't do anything, it's up to you, you go to the police. And when they go to the police, they don't know how to file this case, under what law does it come? So they reroute it back to us, and then it's just a back and forth.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else on that matter?
I want to go back to what Patrick said, about the politics part. There's something called opposition research. And politicians, political parties will go at all costs to find dirt on the opponent. And it's like, it's allowing people to push the limit, right? In order for them to win. So it's win at all costs. But they don't realize sometimes the terrible consequence on the person's reputation and life ultimately, in their families, marriage and all that. So yes, we want to win, but I think there should be some kind of etiquette, some kind of boundaries of how far we go in finding dirt on our opponents.
True.
Yeah. Do you want to join in?
Well, we have, I think, generally a little bit of a moral degradation in our society. We have a lot of influence from media, IT, social media, like we call it, or sometimes maybe it's unsocial media, we don't know.
Antisocial media.
Antisocial. Because we overwhelm today with information, okay? We get all kinds of news, we get things from Instagram, Facebook, you name all the social media websites, and things are posting all kinds of content. And it's so overwhelming that sometimes we have these things, people are posting whatever, and I think there's lots of gradually different kind of levels of sextortion. There's the one that is maybe for fun or for jealousy reasons, and there's one that is maybe including even childhood. Then there's one for the teenagers, and then one that goes even into economics and politics. So there's different levels of sextortion, but I think what's alarming is that the numbers go up. We have statistics that show these numbers go rapidly up, and they have a huge influence on our social and economic and political fabric and life. And that is something that has to be taken extremely serious. And that's why any kind of law that protects the people, which that's what law is for, is absolutely urgent to get this into legislation.
Okay, good. So why do you think we're not taking this as serious as we should? I think you have mentioned that, you as a mother, you feel that you don't, this protection is not there for our kids in this digital age. Why do you think we haven't gone there yet in this country?
Well, I think people don't like to talk about it.
Taboo.
Yeah. People don't like to talk about it. They play it down a lot. And people are ashamed. Maybe victims don't come as forward as much as they should. The amount of cases that actually get reported are just a tiny grain of sand of the amount of actual incidences of this sort of crime occurring. So I think it's important to encourage people to speak out, and it's important to have a platform where they can report these crimes. For example, I was just doing a little bit of research, and I discovered that our neighboring Mauritius have an online reporting system for these sort of crimes, which I thought was amazing. It's a very educational website where they can explain to you all the different types of crimes which fall under sextortion, the different places you can report. You can lodge a report or a complaint online, and that is investigated, and then you're contacted confidentially if you want to take the matter further. And it's a system which is brought together by numerous stakeholders. So it's the police, their Department of Information and Technology, the AG's office. So I think this is something that we could easily replicate here. It's just a matter of the stakeholders getting together and replicating a website very similar to what Mauritius have in place. I think that would be the first step. So people feel comfortable coming forward and reporting it. They're not always comfortable going to the police station. They would prefer that first point being somewhere that they can just log into a website online and report it there and then confidentially, rather than picking up a phone as well. They don't want to really speak about it. Maybe it's easier writing what happened to you than speaking about it for the first time. So I think this is something we could consider.
And to continue, I was just going to ask you, and any of you can jump in, what is the mentality of the police and other authorities to which these cases, even if they're tiny number of cases, when they are reported, what is the mentality of our authorities? I mean, do they say, oh, this is nothing, you have not been hurt, or how is the mentality? Do you think that is also maybe with the taboo mentality also preventing people from reporting and for authorities to take it seriously?
Very much, very much. First of all, to what Natasha said, I totally agree. And I think we don't have a defense mechanism. Because what happens is that when you talk about something is being taboo, okay, fine, it's taboo. But what is the defense mechanism? We don't have, like you said, people are afraid, coming back to psychology. Because sextortion is something, it's similar to kidnapping, but the thing is, it's a constant degradation and a constant emotional abuse on yourself. Because if you're physically kidnapped, you have a ransom, you pay, you get released. But if someone has your digital life, you don't have any value, you don't have any source that you're going to get it back. You're not guaranteed that person can say, yeah, fine, I want a ransom. But what you pay the ransom, what is the guarantee that he's going to have? He's not going to have any copies of your digital sources. So that's one thing, that's why people don't come in forward, because what if I go in forward and he leaks my digital data, my reputation, and my moral, what the society is going to think of me? It all plays a major role. Number two, talking about how the laws, they see this.
Yeah.
So first of all, when you talk about taboo, it's the whole society. Okay, there can be the 5 panelists who are talking about sextortion, but that's fine. But you can
And
see-
Seychelles is just 90,000 people.
see?
Huh?
So mostly when you go to the police, first of all, most of the time they don't know what's a sextortion. They think, okay, what they think is that it's something between a relationship. So it comes under family affairs. So it doesn't get seen as a crime that is supposed to be seen as a crime, but rather than it comes under a family affairs. So they have a different approach of seeing that crime. So they get it to family affairs. Okay, we'll have a consultation for you. Couples can go and sort it out. But no, it's not about couples. So that education, the differentiation between a legal, a lawful, a sinful crime, and a social affair is very big.
Interesting. Yeah.
I
Please
would
jump
say
in.
sometimes we don't want to talk about the obvious. I mean, that's the basic thing. We don't want to talk about the obvious.
Especially about sex.
There you go. If we recognize what we know is a problem, the question is, it's not just the person that came, who else is going to be uncovered? And who else is complicit in this crime?
True.
And especially in Seychelles, we know how things work, right? We play the ostriches a lot, right? Because we don't want to deal with real issues because so many people have their hand in the cookie jar, so to speak. So it is a very difficult, that's why it remains taboo, because you can uncover things that people are going to be very uncomfortable in not just accepting, but dealing with.
Yeah. And what do you think? Can you talk about the politicians and the politics?
Yeah, I like because there was the side of the victim, which I think is very important. But I would like to also elaborate more on the side of the perpetrator. Because when the perpetrators will not get their aim, we don't have a lot of victims. I think we have to concentrate on the perpetrator. So how can we push against this kind of lenient behavior of people, people that think it's easy, it's so convenient nowadays with a mobile phone to film anybody, to take a picture of anybody, and you're actually intruding in the privacy, in the private law of a person, if you will, in their atmosphere, in their way that in that way that should never been happening under the law. So we need immediately to have a law that's very strong. And we need to also have, of course, we'll talk about it later probably, about education. Yep. And we need to show the perpetrators that this is not a joke. It's not a bagatelle.
Yeah.
It's not a small thing. Because just like you say, the impact can be for life of that other person. Just because we don't see it monetarily, or you don't crush a car, you don't see it, something is broken, it's not visible. Same like psychology. The damage is not visible.
Yes.
So we tend to play this down. But if a career or social life or something else bigger is on the line, it is a very serious matter. So the perpetrators are one that sometimes, by society even, taking things very lightly and do this to, maybe some people say, I did it for fun, I just want to do this and that. And they're not aware of the major consequences of their actions.
All right, there you go. Thank you. So with this, it's a serious issue that is not given enough, weight in this country. We shall take a break. We'll be back. Come back. Welcome back. We have a very, very, very hot topic today. We're talking about sextortion. And before we adjourned, we were talking about education that Mr. Dice brought up. So what can we say? What kind of awareness education do we need to bring this further and to make sure that we're aware of most or all of the dimensions that we have to sextortion? I'd like to start. Mr. Babu?
Yeah, good. Education, it would be like from the children to the elder. It's like an age gap that you're going to fill. So nowadays it's like with online being so much digitally and phones and tablets, it's like we're welcoming the perpetrators to come and peek into our lives, giving us our locations, our live locations, where we're going for vacations, if you're going to be home or not. So people, obviously, you're giving half the information to the perpetrator. So all he's like, he's welcomed. So we need to have a boundary to see that what are the informations that you can share to the world and what are the informations that you can keep away from the world. It's fine to be sharing everything to your friends, but you need to have the limitations. You need to have your basic securities in your social medias, in your phones, how to secure your laptops and tablets. You need this basic etiquette knowledge of doing that. Usually at workplaces, we see people roam around without locking the computers. Anyone walking that, they see an open computer, they just pop in a pen drive, they can copy all the informations, and then they can leak this information, get you in trouble, and they can earn themselves something.
Yeah.
So these are basic knowledges that I'm talking about security. I'm not talking in deep security, but these are basics that I think everyone should know. As soon as you have a phone, a 7-year-old to a 70-year-old, I think we should have an awareness. Maybe it can be from the department, or it can be from the government, or maybe from the health sector. Just basically how you can secure yourself.
All right, good. Anybody else about your responsibility or how we need to have an awareness nationally, maybe?
Yeah, I agree. I think the freedom to enjoy technology is to know the truth about it. At home, it starts at home, right? And then we go into our communities, in our schools. It goes in every department. Even the store that's selling me this latest iPhone 12 with the latest gadgets. I need to know what this thing is about, So basic information, the truth about it, the risks that comes with it, allows me to know what are my boundaries to really enjoy and make the most of it. But if I don't understand it, it will really affect me, definitely.
Who do you think, I'm coming back, who do you think should be responsible? Us? Like, if I'm not I'm not like Mr. Babu, I'm not like a tech guru, and I don't know, but I want to use the technology because, let's be honest, it's also very advantageous. It's good, like, if you're in business, it's good for marketing, it's good for a lot of things. So what do you think nationally, or is there an institution that should do it? What do you think? I know we have our personal responsibility, but what else, in terms of education that we could do? Anybody?
Well, generally, I want to say that privacy is a high value. And sometimes we tend to forget that. It's a high value. And of course, the one who has to come in is sooner or later the parliament, the government. This is something that with every legislation is the same thing. People should have the maximum of freedom that they should enjoy and that they can enjoy. But when there are certain things, that's why we have the law on the side of the moral, how can you say, to hold up the moral values. And if there's no other way, we need strong law enforcement. And to come back to education, I think education must be holistically all the time. So it must be starting from childhood, with showing maybe them certain videos, with doing role plays, which is very good. Even the kids can do what happens if somebody takes a picture of you, and then shows it to your friend. What kind of implications does that have? What kind of consequences could that have? So kids already learn in consequential ways of what their actions can actually lead to. So that is the childhood education, and then it's about, of course, teenager in schools, primary 1, primary 2, and later on, of course, adult education. Adult education more maybe to show the perpetrators, or maybe the perpetrators to be, that this is really a high crime, something that is very serious. So it's a retaliation that the law does, that people know you really, really are in big trouble if you send or post these kind of private photos or videos to anybody. And something else about IT nowadays, we have even the IT ability to Photoshop even videos and photos in a way that you do not even have to be done this action, but somebody takes a video or photo of you and he turns it around in a way that you will think that there's something happened in that video. Yeah. And that is also extremely dangerous. And I think this is also for the society to know all of that, and then to understand that not everything that you see is the truth. And George Washington once said that nothing is what it seems. It was already a long time ago. So we have to make people aware that what they see might not be the truth, and to wait for proof. But for all of this, we need a framework, we need a strategy, we need things to be put in place, and especially when it comes to law and legislation, and the parliament needs to look in that to protect the people, sometimes from themselves, unfortunately.
True. Mrs. Burian, do we need to educate the lawmakers about this?
I think so. As I said, sextortion is not a term that is defined under our law. So a lot of people have different ideas of what it should entail, or what is a crime under sextortion. There are discussions as to whether or not blackmail between exes should be considered as sextortion or not. So I think this is a discussion that is worth having. Clearly define what it is so that the people who are there to enforce it know what is a crime and what they can do about it. So I think it has to start there. And I don't think this is something that's new. Obviously, it's all around the world, so it's not something that we have to fabricate from scratch. We can take advice and examples from other jurisdictions. So it's not a very difficult task. There are, in fact, conventions in place in respect of cybercrime, which we haven't even signed or ratified. So I think that's the first step as well, to go and ratify and sign certain cyber conventions so we can get the support from other jurisdictions when it comes to prosecuting or even trying to identify criminals who perhaps target locals, people from other countries. As I said, internet, we're exposing ourselves not just to people around us in our country, but to anyone all over the world. So if you are being blackmailed or targeted by somebody who may be in Thailand, for example, how do you hold them accountable if you don't have this relationship in place with other jurisdictions to be able to identify this person and bring them before a court of law?
Yeah, exactly.
Please to add something on her. I heard Mr. Patrick saying about educating. I heard Ms. Natasha. But I think I want to add one simple thing is that something called self-conscious. When you go to a new place and you have a conscious mind that I'm in a new environment, the atmosphere I'm not familiar with, so you try to have a precaution. It's the same with the blue nova that we call is the internet. So that's the technical term that we call the blue nova because it's like a sea. So when you're taking a dive in the sea, you don't know what it is. So you need to have a bit of self-awareness at what you're doing, what are the sites that you're accessing. Are you familiarized with the person that's sending a mail or he's being in touch with you? Are you familiarized with the context that's been circulated around? If someone is sending you, let's say, an image on a WhatsApp group, so you should have the mind to think, okay, should I just judge this picture just by I'm getting because a good friend of mine sent it to me? No, but I need to have some research. Okay, does it look a little bit fishy? Does it look muffled? Does it have a glitch in the clarity? So these are some minor things that a person should take in consideration.
Yes.
But I think that's the thing. This is why the perpetrators have taken advantage of our naivete because it's always masked, right? It always looks slick. It's always with good intentions. It always looks innocent, actually.
True.
And for most of us who are, are not as tech savvy, we would not even think there's anything sinister about the intentions. So we indulge. And especially when the perpetrators know there's no law that's going to indict me, so they do it with impunity and take advantage of vulnerable people.
True.
Exactly. Especially kids. Let's talk about kids. I was reading before doing this. I was reading a research done in the United States, saying in one state, and they were saying that there are 1 in 3 children before they reach the age of 13. They have been victims of sextortion, and particularly, let's talk about gender as well, because particularly, I don't know whether you think this is the case, it seems like there are girls or women that are more victims of sextortion, and they found that 2 in 3 of the cases were girls before the age of 16. They were victims, and they reported being a victim of sextortion. So what are your thoughts about this? Do you think that applies to us in Seychelles? Do you think we have more girls that are more vulnerable, more children vulnerable with this?
Sure. Okay, I will not talk on the technicality terms. I'll just keep it simple. So what happens is on social media, it's like a fishing ground. It's like a hunting spear. It's a ground that perpetrators, they come to hunt. So what happens is that they steal an identity of someone. Let's say there's a 16-year-old kid, and just going on her Facebook or on her Instagram, I can have 50% of her details, who are her friends, where she lives, what she does for a hobby. So I can just have a fake profile, and I can just try to say, I'm that person from that club. And obviously being naive, like he said, Mr. Petrus said that, I'm so sorry, that it's the innocence. Because at that age, and also with the education that we brought up in schools, we don't focus that much on educating technically, that what are the goods and the bads. So again, they take advantage of the innocence, and they just try to, play the game of, seducing them or alluring them. And because of kids at that age, they don't have this knowledge of understanding or thinking, they just say, okay, this is someone I know, and they just keep on giving informations.
I would add, sex ultimately is the reason why there's sextortion.
Yeah.
Do we fully understand sex? How are we selling the idea of sex? How are we manifesting, displaying, practicing sexuality in all of its various colors? And I think even the society, to some degree, should be held accountable, should be held responsible. For instance, there's this new hit song, right, by Cardi B, WAP. I'm not gonna say what it means,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Now, she's got 75 million followers.
Yeah.
And I know a big chunk of these followers are young females who are amazed, enamored by her. But what message is she sending?
Exactly.
You know, you mentioned earlier about Cuties, you know, this movie that came out about young girls twerking and expressing their sexuality at a young age. Is that exploitation? What does that do to a fancy of a pedophile? You know, in the comfort of his home, turn on his Netflix, right, which he paid, and then just allow his wild fantasies and take him wherever place he wants to go because of that one movie, when our young girls are being used as sex objects. So I think the society is complicit as well, and we need to take a serious stock at our own selves.
Yeah. That was going to be my next topic, but do you have something before we move on?
Also, one more thing, adding to Jimmy's, I think parents, they play a major role in this because they should know what their kids are watching, what their kids are into, what they're browsing on the net. So I think there should be a little bit of parental control. And I think education, again, either it could from the school, from the teachers, or from the parents, they should start telling the kids, differentiating the kids, what are the goods of the internet and what are the bads of the internet. So as they grow up, they cultivate themselves. Oh, okay, I can differentiate between, if a stranger is coming to approach me with a friend request. So basically, I can differentiate that. No, I don't know this person, so I should stay away. So I think this all starts from home, from school, and coming back to the system, the whole society. I think this is a really pinching point because even now, in our education system, we are not touching these parts. Basically, we're just touching is like Microsoft Words. That's all. Excel Words. That's all. MS Office. But we're not going beyond that up to up to secondary 5, and that's really stressing.
Exactly.
I mean, look at the digital age we are living in, and this is not the topic that we should be stuck at a secondary 5.
Exactly, but listening to all of you, and we say, what digital age? Because we don't know. You know, I'm hearing some of these things for the first time here myself. So I think it's educating the parents, educating themselves before they can educate the kids, and the teachers educating themselves, the schools, the lawmakers, the politicians, everybody in this country. But let's go, primitive. Let's talk about what Mr. Petrus has brought up, sexual behavior, sexual attitude that may be contributing towards this. I know we are in small societies like Seychelles, sex is often taboo. So what constitutes of good sexual behavior or bad, or this issue with gender? Some of the things that you said I don't agree with, in revolutionary age, but with women and how they've viewed, and men and all of those dynamics, can we just address this and maybe what are your thoughts about this, about how we're behaving sexually towards that, what we're accepting, maybe we shouldn't accept? I don't know. Let me start with you, Mrs. Jurian.
I think that the internet and even television don't really give a good example of what should be normal behavior. I cannot put on music channels at my house because every video is. So you, as an adult, you watch it, you don't even notice anything wrong. But when you have a 5-year-old child sitting next to you, you kind of look at him, change the channel. Yeah, exactly. They're really staring. And what is he staring at? And then you realize, oh, this woman is twerking. He's wondering what she's doing, So it's only then that you realize that there is a problem with the images that are being displayed on our television screens. And even on social media, as we say, you go on Instagram, for example, and a lot of the time you see, people are posting TikTok videos. As you say, there was this craze that was going around with this Cardi B video. And there were TikTok videos that were coming after that where people were dancing to her song and they were getting millions of likes. And all the videos are from, most of them are from young girls, even young men, having fun and dancing to the song. And it doesn't really give a good image. where is the respect or the self-respect, really? Self-worth is gone, you know? So I think we need to bring that back, really. People need to realize that their body is precious, and it's not something that you should be displayed for everyone to see forever, especially on social media and on the internet, where, as you say, you post something once and it's gone. You can't take it off.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to join in?
Well,
Yes, Mr. Dice.
thing for talk about the industry and talk about where is the core force for any kind of wrong direction in this world. And we have to see that certain people are sitting down and they are major players of the industry, and they're just think, how can we tackle our psychological defects that we have, our curiosity, our jealousy, and they try to tackle and tap into this, and they make money with that, and they do it to whatever cost.
Sure.
So they will post whatever they can, as long as the law allows them.
Yes.
So I think moral values it's good to be grown up with moral values, but with all this influence, this bad influence that is allowed by law, there's no other way that we have to look at the core of all evil. That means to put the industry on a leash, to put the IT on a leash, we need cybersecurity, we need more laws, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel, just like you said. All of these things are already in place in some countries already, where things are just controlled. And you need, in a certain way, with all freedom that we want to give to everybody, but we need to control in a certain way, in a natural way, in a reasonable and logical way. That's why we need cyber security, also with drugs, by the way. Most of the drugs are getting sold now over the internet. I didn't even know how this really works, but apparently it is like this.
Yes, it is.
And so it's a field, and even one of the Microsoft executives says, we are still in the Wild West phase of the internet, meaning everything is possible. You know, we have cars, we drive on the road, we have lots of signs and lots of regulations on the road. Internet, we don't have lots of regulations, and it's not enough. And we cannot unleash the internet because it's simply too dangerous, especially psychologically. It has a huge impact in many ways, and it needs regulation, but soft regulation and logical and reasonable regulation, but it needs it urgently.
Okay, there you go. We need to strike a balance. It's a very hot topic. Stay with us. We'll be back soon. So we are back with our very interesting topic, which is sextortion. Next question, panelists. What are the psychological effects, the deep effects of being a victim of sextortion?
Well, sexual exploitation, sexual abuse, sexual crime is deeply psychological because it affects the way you think, it affects the way you feel, it affects the choices that you make, it affects your self-concept. So it affects every aspect of your life. And I think if somebody has been a victim of sextortion, you understand that they have a sense of fear about how others view them. Have I lost credibility, respectability? Am I going to be able to connect again? Because ultimately we all want to connect and have a sense of belonging. Everybody wants to be loved unconditionally, imperfections and all. And so it really presses this deep, dark cloud upon a person, upon a victim, when they are facing this terrible, terrible crime, especially when they've experienced it. So that's the implication of it. And I think that's why the perpetrators really need to understand the psychological implication, even if they don't care. They just think about their profits,
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody else?
I think it's a long-term trauma, because once you become a victim of sextortion or sexual abuse, it stays with you for a very long time. And to get out of that zone, it's really hard.
Yes.
And especially when it involves something with your own privacy, then you feel like you're really vulnerable and you've been robbed, you've been naked like in front of the society. And then you have the pressure of the society that even if you don't do anything, but psychologically you always have a constant nudge that's saying that what the society is going to think about me. You may try to hide it as much as you can, but you always have a constant, what if tomorrow my vitality gets leaked out? So you have that thing for the rest of your life.
Okay, good. So, what do you think?
What I think also, talking about the perpetrators again, the perpetrators can become victim also in the future. So they need to understand that whatever they do has a consequence. And I think there's different levels of impact the impact can be the inner impact, which means our social and psychological behavior, which is a very long-term thing, just like you say. And the other thing is also then economically and even politically, because somebody who is in a certain position or has a certain job or a certain business to run, you can ruin somebody's existence with this. And I think this scale is not known or not known to most of the perpetrators, or at least they don't care. And this is something that perpetrators especially should take more seriously, or there should be enough cybercrime units and enough laws to make them understand that this is not a small thing, it's not a bagatelle, like I said.
Are you also talking about maybe loss to a country? Let's say there was a very good leader in a country and was a victim of sextortion, has to resign, and then it is also the country that will lose from the expertise of that person. Okay, so what do you think, Mrs.
Well, I think one thing that we have to remember is that it's a very hard thing for someone to come forward and admit that they've been a victim of this sort of crime. And therefore, we need to sensitize everybody who then comes in contact with these people as to how to approach it, how to understand, how to help them. A lot of the time, as we say, because it's not clearly defined, the first responders don't know how to react when they receive these sort of complaints. They're not very sympathetic, and maybe the victims feel that, especially in a small society like ours, is this really confidential? Will the whole world, the whole country know this has happened to me? How will I cope when everyone realizes this has happened to me? So I think it's important for us to remember that we have to support these people, but also remind them that although it's a hard thing to do to come forward, they need to come forward, because without their complaint and without their willingness to come and testify to what's happened to them, it's very hard to hold these people accountable. Ultimately, we want to bring justice, so we want to make sure these people are held accountable and they're sentenced, and the victim receives some sort of compensation, or at least the feeling that the person who has done this to them won't do it again or has been punished for what they've done. So it's very important, although it's so difficult, I know, for a victim to come forward. Sometimes they don't want to speak about what's happened. They have to be brave, and they have to come forward and explain and give evidence as to what has happened.
And very quickly, what happened to the few cases that you mentioned that were reported?
Well, some of them have ended up before the courts. Ultimately, unfortunately, some of them, as I said, you may get a case that the police are investigating where it comes to light that perhaps there are 70, 80 victims, but at the end of the day, only 6 or 7 people will actually want to come forward. The others, although they've been identified on video or photographs, they're so embarrassed. They wanted to forget this ever happened, and they don't want to be part of any police investigation. So ultimately, it's very hard really to hold this person accountable for the gravity of the crime they've committed. They have so many victims, but you can't, because people don't want to come forward and speak about it.
Let me add something quickly to what Natasha said. It's so important when she said the perpetrators, they hold power over their victims through silence. So until I break the silence, he's going to feel so powerful because he's controlling the way I think and everything else. So very, very excellent point you made there. So we have to speak up and speak out. And that disempowers them, that allows them to know that it's not just not cool, not right, but you're much weaker than I am. I can face my truth.
And very quick question, I know we're running out of time. Do you think that society sympathizes with the victim or with the perpetrators? Who gets society?
Society thinks in a very different manner. They don't usually see the victims as a victim. They think that it's them to be blamed. I don't know why it is, but everywhere it's like a victim is always the person who goes through this pressure of society, seeing that he must have done something, he must have intrigued something. And talking about perpetrators, it's like unless there is a law to threaten them, they are free. They think that they can do anything and they can get away, because it's like a wild, wild west. Like you're walking with a deadly weapon, and unless there is a law that says that you can't have this weapon unless you have a registration or stuff like that, the people are going to keep on walking. So digitally sitting behind a screen, a hacker, a perpetrator, or a criminal, unless he doesn't fear that there is a law, if I get caught, I might go to prison, I might end up paying this much of money as a fine, unless they don't have this leverage, they just feel free. They just walk out like they're like.
I think what society has to realize as well is that it's easy to judge until something happens to you. And it's easy to say, oh, for example, this 14-year-old girl,
They put it on
she
themselves.
put it on herself, but she didn't consent to this. She's 14. She cannot consent to any sexual act. So we're there as parents. We need to look at what's gone wrong. Why has this happened? Why has this child been targeted? How we can help them and support them rather than judging and making them feel worse.
That is what's so sad, because the victim always are guilty until proven innocent. And that's why many of them just remain silent, because they are ashamed even more so for speaking the truth. So they just feel like, you know what, I'll try to figure it out somehow, because being victimized creates a lot of shame. There's something wrong with me that invited that kind of abuse.
Okay. All right. So we have time for one final question, statements from you. What do you think, in 2-3 minutes, what do you think is the way forward? What should we do to either create more awareness or to bring in the state, or what is your final word on the matter? Let's start with you.
Well, I think lots of solutions lie in a holistic approach. So we have to do on many corners the good thing. One thing is, for example, a cybersecurity unit. So even, by the way, Facebook and other people will have to be, even WhatsApp have to be accountable for that. Maybe one day artificial intelligence will be good enough to screen every picture and will just look for any kind of illicit content and then sorts it out and filters it out. Maybe in one day this will happen from their side. The society side, of course, there needs to be an education, but I think it has to come from schools. It has to become active, to be activated by government, and of course we need the laws. At the same time, again, raising the awareness through even videos and transparencies, to understand that things cannot happen without the consent of another person. So you cannot force somebody if somebody doesn't want to. And the other thing is that privacy is a high value in life. So we need to understand this. It's an extremely high value, and privacy is something that is in our transparent way, which is a good world sometimes. With the internet, everything is open, everything is accessible. But the last door of privacy must be always kept closed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Babu.
I would say that I think the top stakeholders and the top bureaucrats has to come together, sit down, and they have to consider that this is one of the deadliest crimes, and they need to sit down with the law firms. I'm talking about the Department of Information, I'm talking about the Ministry of Information, I'm talking about the law firms, businessmen, other departments from the health. They need to come on a round table, sit down and talk about this and see what can be done forward. Have a precision, start somewhere to implement this as a criminal law. So then even the perpetrators, they feel they feel threatened that if something they do, they're not going to walk scot-free, they're going to have punished. And this would give a little bit of justice to the victims who have already been suffered without a proper law. So I think this is an initiative state that everyone should come and they should work together to initiate this into the law in our country.
Good, thank you. Mr. Vetus, final words.
Yes, I think it comes down to us understanding that sex is wonderful. It's incredible. First things first. But I think as an individual, I need to understand what are my values towards it. I need to educate myself. I need to be prepared. I need to understand that powerful force that is within every human being. I think families need to talk about it. I think we need to understand our values and our sense of morality. Society needs to talk about it, school. And so on every level, we need to have a sense of what are our values concerning such powerful issues that affect every single one of us. I would say sexuality affects everything that we do as human beings. It motivates almost everything that we do as human beings, whether directly or indirectly. So having a sense of value about it, education, and modeling it in a way that's beneficial, that's healthy rather than deviant.
Good, thank you. Final words to the magistrate, to the lady, the only lady on the panel.
I think the first thing we all need to do is look at ourselves and look at our own security. Then once we've looked at how safe am I, then it goes a little bit further. How safe is my family? How safe is my computer at work? How safe is everyone around me? I think you need to take it by stage process and try and protect yourself as much as possible. That's all that you as an individual can do. But from a legal perspective, I definitely think the first thing that we need to do is to ratify a convention when it comes to cybercrime, then try and define sextortion under our law, make it something, create a framework, a piece of legislation which covers cybercrime, which identifies sextortion as a crime under our penal code, then educate our enforcers, our first responders, the Ministry of Education, our teachers, our police, our health professionals, how to deal with these sort of crimes. So it's a there are many stages to this process, ultimately to be able to protect the victim and to bring the perpetrator also to justice. So I think it's a big project, but it's something that I think that we can tackle, and it should be it's something that we should start working on immediately.
Transparency Initiative Seychelles has already started this discussion. And with that, sex is a wonderful thing, so it should not be exploited or extorted from anybody. Thank you very much for watching this episode. See you next time.